Welcome to the FM Britain Tactics videocast. We're back again after the Christmas break. And while we were on the Christmas break, we received a few new translations of Tactical Theorems 10. We've now got versions in Italian, French, Danish and Polish. And the links will be going up on the website very soon, so keep an eye out for those. This week, episode 2, we're going to be looking at shape, and specifically shape when one team has one formation and the other team has another formation. Sometimes we've referred to this as non-mirrored formations. Just think of it as two teams playing different formations. Now, when a 4-4-2 lines up against a 4-4-2, it's very obvious to the players, it's very obvious to the match engine, and it's very obvious to the managers who is supposed to be marking whom and who really is covering which part of the pitch. So you don't get so many problems in places being exploited. You know, you've got the fullbacks to look at the wingers to look at the fullbacks, the centres all mirrored, so it's fine. But sometimes you come up with a 4-4-2 against a 4-5-1 or a 4-2-4 or some other kind of formation which isn't quite the same, and suddenly there are gaps. And the team that can control possession and the team that can control those gaps has a massive advantage over the opponents. That's basic football tactics, really, but it is something that sometimes, because you've played a team that's playing a particular formation before and you've come out on top, sometimes you don't really notice the gaps, you don't really notice what might have gone wrong. But this is what we're trying to look at here, and kind of works in conjunction with the first video that we put out about shape in terms of the midfield's defensive shape. Now, the game I'm going to analyse today is an away game. Real Madrid at the Bernabeu against Cultural, from a manager on the FM Britain forums called IRL Management. And I thank him very, very much for these PKMs because he gave me a lot of really good analysis alongside them. So it was very easy for me to be able to pick out what he felt were the problems and have a look at what was going on in his match files. And hopefully I've been able to help him as much as he's been able to help me. And it is very useful if you do send through PKMs and give me that kind of information. Because I can use the PKMs then to see if there are common problems that people are having. So thank you to him, and thank you to everybody that sent through PKMs. I know I've been a bit lax over the Christmas period in getting back to people on those, but I will try and fix that in the near future. So without further ado, we'll take a look at Cultural's formation, Madrid's formation, and then show what the potential problems are, and then the actual problems of playing a team that isn't playing the same formation as you.
IRL Management decided to play a simple 4-4-2, but with one of the midfielders dragged back to the defensive midfield position. Now that to me makes quite a lot of sense. Obviously if you're playing a team much better than you want a little bit more stability in the centre of the midfield. But unfortunately in this case it was perhaps the wrong decision to make. Real Madrid have decided to play a 4-2-4, but with a couple of key differences. First, that the wingers are dragged back a little bit to AML and AMR, and second, that the two central midfielders are dragged back to the DMC positions. Now that's going to cause quite a few problems based on the shape of the Cultural formation. So here we are with the two diagrams kind of merged together, and this is where you may begin to see the problems. The DMCs for Real Madrid, the 21 and the 10 on this diagram, are in that space in between the strikers and the midfielders. Now that gives them a lot of time to just be able to pass the ball between each other, and that will give them time to build up the play, which is what they are designed to do. And also you've got the 16 and the 14, the two wingers, who are playing in that space between the fullbacks and between the midfielders. Again, they're there to try and get a run on the fullback and try and run behind them. By giving them that space to receive the ball, you're then giving them the opportunity to run at the defence and give them a chance to do something before they're ever challenged. So you've got two problems here. First, that the opposition's midfield are going to have far too much time on the ball, and second, that the wingers are going to be able to receive the ball far too easily.
Now, the more eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that there's also an advantage for Cultural here, in that their midfielders are playing in a massive hole which has been left by the Real Madrid midfield. And indeed, they've also got the advantage that if their wingers are pushed so far up, and it's Real Madrid, so let's face it, their fullbacks are also going to bomb forward, having two up front and also having those two side midfielders would probably give Cultural quite an advantage. The problem is, we're playing at the Bernabeu against Real Madrid. Who's going to see more of the ball?
Yes, if your team is going to have more of the ball, you're going to be able to exploit their gaps a lot more efficiently. But because Madrid have got more of the ball and their defensive midfielders are allowed to pass the ball around in space to each other and get the ball to their wingers, who should be able to receive the ball in space and then try and do something with it, you're going to cause more problems than you're going to solve. What you need to do is to be able to close down those players. You need to put pressure on those defensive midfielders, and you need to put pressure on those wingers. Otherwise, they're going to have so much time on the ball, they're just going to rip you apart. The clip from the game doesn't actually show a goal, but this is quite a typical move from Real Madrid, and they ended up winning the game 5-0. That might have been a bit flattering to Real Madrid, but at the end of the day, it was really caused by the fact that these problems weren't looked at and weren't solved early on in the match. So, unfortunately, here we see those problems in action. Cristiano Ronaldo here receives the ball in a lot of space. He's able to play it to the defensive midfielder in a lot of space, to the other winger in a lot of space. Cross comes in and the ball's then cleared, but Ramos is able to move forward and pass it to the defensive midfielders, who are allowed to pass it to each other before getting it to the winger, again, who's in a lot of space.
So there we have the basic problems, and fortunately there is a solution. And I think it's twofold. One, a slight change in formation, but mainly our old friend opposition instructions. First of all, really, I don't think you need a holding midfielder in this game. Real Madrid aren't pushing anybody forward. The great thing about a DMC or a holding midfielder is that they can protect the defence from marauding midfielders. Real Madrid just don't have any. There's nobody playing in central midfield told to push forward into the hole behind the strikers. So there's no need for a holding midfield player. You'd be much better off with a flat 4-4-2 and getting your two central midfielders to really harry and press those defensive midfielders. Because that's how Madrid were controlling the possession. They were using those two deeper midfielders, playing in the gap between the midfield and the strikers, and they were just receiving the ball and then flicking it out wide to the wingers. That's how they were controlling the game. So putting pressure on them cuts off the supply to Ronaldo and Benzema. Secondly, you want to deal with Ronaldo and Benzema. You want opposition instructions on the wingers, making sure you're closing them down, making sure you're marking them tightly, so that if they do receive the ball, they've immediately got somebody harrying them, and hopefully stop them from getting the ball in the first place, being able to nick ahead of them, get the ball, stop them from playing. You'd also want to be looking a little bit at your width and a little bit at how far pushed forward your defence were, as we looked at in the first episode of the video podcast, when we were looking at the shape of the midfield in defending. Those kind of lessons that you learnt on marking the wings are definitely very useful here, things that you want to take a look at, because obviously we don't want those wingers playing in loads of space in the same way we don't want those DMCs playing in loads of space. Right, that's pretty much it for this week. Thank you very much to everybody that's submitted PKMs. Like I said, I know I've been lax in getting over them over the Christmas period, but I will try and get through as many as I possibly can and give you feedback on those, and the ones that have some really good examples I will try and use in these webcasts. If you've got any questions or you want to submit any PKMs to me and the Think Tank team, then you can do it via the forums at fm-britain.co.uk, or you can email us thinktank@fm-britain.co.uk, and we'll try and look through as much as we possibly can. Okay, so that's it for this time, and until the next video that we do, I shall see you again soon.